WLW.com. This is Doc Thompson On Demand.
Now, I was just wondering if anyone considered just painting the debt ceiling the same color as the debt walls, because it may make it look like we still have plenty of room to overspend. Maybe that's the plan. You know, you paint the ceiling the same as the wall, it looks much higher. They're still battling the debt ceiling today, expected to vote in the Senate if it happens. And they pass it, the president's likely to sign it very quickly. You got till midnight tonight if you believe the August 2nd deadline. Dive into that a little bit. But to show you how bad it's gotten, the Tooth Fairy is actually cutting back. Yeah, a new study out says that the Tooth Fairy has cut back in the last year substantially, netting an average of 40 cents less. Across the country, kids get an average of 40 cents less from the Tooth Fairy than they did a year ago, down to $2.60 from $3. Wow, when the Tooth Fairy starts cutting back, that is trouble. And apparently the Tooth Fairy, lugging the money and teeth all around the country. Some areas, a little more work, the kids are getting a little bit less. I'm assuming that's the reason why kids get paid, more in certain parts of the country for their teeth than others. The lowest average payout, part of the country. The East. No, it's not the South. I thought it'd be the South. No, the East. In fact, they're down 38 cents. It was an average of $3.40 last year. 38% down to $2.10. Wow, that's a huge cut. Midwest is $2.80 an average, down 10 cents from $2.90. The South is pretty high. Yeah, average tooth, $2.60 down from $3.30. Apparently all teeth are not created equal either. Molars and front teeth, kids get a little bit more. See, I think I know why the South, though, why they pay more for the teeth, why the Tooth Fairy pays more for the teeth in the South. Social justice. Wealth redistribution. Yeah, well, kids in the South have fewer teeth, right? So they need to make more per tooth. Yes, that's what it is. The Tooth Fairy saying, listen, kid, most of your teeth are rotten. You don't have too many left, so I think we probably got to pay you a little bit more per tooth. I'm just guessing that's what it is. I do not have direct contact with the Tooth Fairy. That's my speculation. So even if the Tooth Fairy is cutting back, boy, it's rough. See, that's a problem when you talk about the debt ceiling. It touches all kinds of things, even the local level, because, of course, the money, sadly, often comes from the federal government. We got used to this idea of the federal government taking in money and shipping it from one part of the country to the other. Taking in big blocks of money, which they shouldn't, because really they should just take in enough to fund the federal government, not take in enough to fund the federal government, plus be able to give other parts of the country money, which is what they've done for a long time. And part of the reason you're seeing the job numbers or the jobless numbers increase and more people not have a job is because they're no longer getting paid by the federal government. No, not directly, indirectly, as part of that stimulus plan and other stimulus plans. Well, you got grants and stuff that go to states for all kinds of things. So the federal government said as part of the stimulus plan, we're going to go ahead and pass money along to the different states, and the states could pass it along to local municipalities. Some local municipalities got it directly from the federal government. Well, that money is now run out. States and local municipalities had balanced their budgets partially by taking a bunch of money from the federal government. You probably recall when that happened. When the big stimulus plan was passed, that's one of the things they did. They funneled it to local governments. So now we're all faced with this task of trying to balance the budget with that much less money. See, that's the problem. It wasn't that you had the money coming into the from the federal government. That's a separate issue. It shouldn't be handled that way. It was nice if you're a local municipality or a state to have that money coming in. It was nice that you didn't have to take those drastic measures back then. But I think there were a lot of states or a lot of people in government that said, hey, great, we managed to plug the hole this time around, and didn't look to the future. Very typical. It's all about now with no look to the future. Because they didn't plan for when that money was going to run out. I don't know if they naively thought that there was going to be a second round of federal money, if the economy would truly rebound to the point that they'd have plenty of extra revenue coming in. Maybe that was it. Either way, they did not plan for the worst case scenario, and you usually see that a whole lot. Not planning for the worst case scenario. So when they get to it, and then they go, well, I don't know what we do. We're millions of dollars in the hole. City of Cincinnati, now $33 million projected deficit. $33 million projected deficit, according to the city manager. How are they going to get the money? Well, Cincinnati does this all the time, year after year. It's like we're just worrying about now. The hell with a year from now. They did it when times were good, because nobody ever wants to make the tough choices. Nobody ever wants to balance and say, listen, we've got to prepare for the times when it is lean, when we don't have the same revenues and we maybe have higher expenses. We've got to always live on that shoestring budget, putting a little extra money away for when times are bad. Making calculated moves as opposed to just, whoop, here's what we need right now. So now the plan, proposed by the city manager, the idea anyway, is lay off workers, including police and fire. Right now, would you say that's a good time for the city of Cincinnati to be laying off cops and firefighters? Is that really where you need to head to? Maybe they're at that point. But I still see that stupid streetcar money out there. Now, I know it comes from a separate fund, but why did you push that anyway? There's money out there. You're just not spending it in the right places. So the plan is to possibly lay off some cops and firefighters. In fact, if they don't lay off any police or firefighters, city manager says that they're going to have to lay off some of the other lesser paid civilians. $33 million deficit. Now, in the short term, they're going to try to apply for a federal grant that'll try to keep 50 more officers around. Problem with that, it's still only temporary. Are you still planning on something big happening down the road? And if that big thing does happen down the road, the economy turns around, suddenly the heavens open up and jobs just start popping up all over. Piles of money fall on all the citizens of the tri-state. And we have a lot more cash. Then what? So you get to keep those cops and firefighters or whatever. What about the next downturn? In other words, if they apply for the federal grant and get to keep 50 cops or firefighters or more, and things get better, you've just gotten through those next couple of years when things are better. What are you going to plan after that? You know bad times are coming again because it's all on the wheel. It's all cyclical. It comes around. So instead of running to keep up with the ship, how about we get somebody to actually steer the ship? How about we get people that actually say, here is the long-term plan? In fact, that's the only part of Old Lady Quinlivan's suggestion that made sense about extending the length of time for council persons in Cincinnati. Problem is, 4 years is still not long-term. You need that 20, 30, 40-year plan and somebody to lay it out where most people in the tri-state or wherever you are in the country can say, that's the way forward. So even according to Leslie Giz, though, she said it could actually cost the city if they lay off cops and firefighters or other people because they've got accrued time. You got to pay them for that. In the short term, you're not going to get that huge savings you thought. They're looking at a few $1 million in savings. Well, guess what? If you're planning on a few $1 million and you have to pay out all that accrued time, you're paying that out in a big lump sum, a big chunk of money. So you're not going to get it this year. Now, you may get it a year or so down the road where you don't have it. You'd get that additional savings, but you're not going to get saving now. So is that really the best plan? Doesn't seem like it, does it? All right, I'm going to give you some congressional pay by the numbers. Tell you where some of the money is going, some places maybe you haven't thought about. Some of the other plans Well, we've got another big stimulus plan they're working on, another big one for infrastructure projects. Yeah, that's what the first stimulus plan was supposed to be, to build roads and bridges and all the sewers and all kinds of stuff. A new stimulus plan being bantered about, a transportation infrastructure plan for $3.1 trillion. $3.1 trillion. This is being pushed by the American Society for Civil Engineers. Seems a bit self-serving, doesn't it? Yeah. $3.1 trillion. My question on it is that 3.1 additional, or do we count the first stimulus of almost $1 trillion? Was that a down payment, or do we need another 3.1 trillion? Yeah, probably an additional 3.1 trillion. It's Doc Thompson at 700 WL. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast for meteorologist Frank Marzullo. Hazy sunshine, hot this afternoon, muggy and humid, high 94. Going to be partly cloudy this evening, turning to a possibility of thunderstorms after midnight, overnight low 73. Early showers and thunderstorms tomorrow morning, and a high around 92 tomorrow afternoon. Currently 80 degrees at 700 WLW. All right, Evan sent me an email. Very good observation. That apparently what we've been experiencing is a tooth fairy bubble. Great point. He said when he was a kid, he got about 25 cents. He said now his kids get $5. That's a really good point. It seems to have grown, what the tooth fairy gives kids, disproportionately to the economy, where they're getting a whole lot more. $3 seemed a little bit high. But if you're giving them $5, that seems pretty high if the tooth fairy's passing that along. Got another email. He said, when I was a young boy, the tooth fairy visited while we were on vacation. I'd lost a tooth. I put it under my pillow. When I woke up in the morning, there was a $50 bill. A $50 bill. I'll tell you what, that's one incredible tooth. Was it a gold filling? Maybe that's what it was. Was it a tooth with a filling, gold in it? Silver, something like that? That's definitely a bubble there. Here's some numbers for you that you're not going to hear those people in Washington on Capitol Hill discuss as they decide where we should head with our economy and whether or not they should raise the debt ceiling. The salary for most congressmen and senators, it's the same unless they're in a leadership capacity, and then they get $5,000, $10,000 more a year. They get more allowance for a bigger staff, stuff like that. But is just shy of $175,000. $175,000. The speaker in leadership, $223,000. Make over $200,000 a year. I haven't heard any of them cut. No, I haven't heard any of them come forward and say, you know what? Things are tough right now. Whether they're Democrat or Republican, they're saying, we can cut certain things. A lot of the Democrats are saying, right on, let's cut that defense spending. And the Republicans are saying, let's cut other things. But I haven't heard any of them talk about cutting their own salaries or even their staffs. I would think that might be an interesting place to look. The average allowances they get per year, per session, per term, it's broken down a couple ways. For House members to cover personnel, office, and mailing expenses, the average range, again, this is the House of Representatives, for personnel, all their staffers, office, and mailing expenses. So, pens and paper, stuff like that. Each one gets $1.3 million on the low end, and it can go up to almost $1.7 million. There's 435 members of the House of Representatives that have voting power, and then a handful of others that do not have voting from places like D.C. and, some island territories. Between $1.3 and $1.7 million for paper and staffers. And that varies based on how far they are from D.C. Now, they get to decide how many staffers they have and how much they're going to give each one of them. There are some basic limitations. They couldn't just give one staffer, $1.2 million. Doesn't work that way. There is a cap, but it's pretty high. It's, I think, it's around 150,000 is the most they can give them. But imagine being a congressional staffer and raking in that kind of dough. Plus, of course, they get all the paper and all that stuff. Leadership gets a little bit more. To compare what they make now at almost $175,000 a year, congressional members, people in Congress in year 2000, made $141,000. So in 11 years, they went from $141,000 a year to $175,000 a year. That's a pretty good increase. What did they make in 1980? $60,000 a year. So in 1980, they were making $60,000. Today, $175,000. What is that? Almost triple since 1980. 30 years, tripled. How much did they make in 1789? It was a daily pay rate. In 1789, they got $6 a day while in session, and that was for the first congressional members. First people to serve made $6 a day, and only when they were in session. Boy, you've come a long way, baby. Long way. All right, so it's going to the House today, debt ceiling. I expect Sherrod Brown, I could be wrong. Maybe he'll vote for it. I was going to say I expect him to vote against it, and Rob Portman to probably vote for it. Could go either way, though, because it hasn't really been down party lines, primarily, but not exclusively. It's not all that close. As far as Ohio's congressional delegation, the members in the House of Representatives from Ohio, all of the Democrats in Ohio voted against the bill. Every one of them. Most Republicans voted for it, but there were two that voted against it. One of them, Mike Turner, Dayton area. The other one, Jim Jordan. Now, Jim Jordan is a little bit northeast of Dayton. In fact, I had him on a couple of weeks ago, and he pledged he was going to vote against it unless it was a cut, cap, and balance. And his whole point is we got to balance the budget. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to say. In fact, he said, this is a quote from him, "The framework opens the door to a dangerous national security cut and raises the possibility that 6 Democrats and 1 misguided Republican could put tax increases on the table." He said the requirement that Congress vote on a balanced budget amendment is a positive step. He's right, it's a positive step, but it's not locked in. It's not guaranteed. It's just that they are going to have a vote for it. They don't have to vote in favor of it. They're just going to put it on the floor and they're going to vote. Could easily die and probably will because the Democrats want to continue to overspend. It's a positive step that they're going to have a vote. But the whole point of it was that they would vote for it and pass it out of the House. The president wouldn't have to sign it. And then it would go to the states for ratification, which it probably, if it passes in the House and Senate and goes to the states, a balanced budget amendment will likely pass. They need 38 states, and they can probably get that done. They would get whatever number of years they stipulate when they pass it. When it came to the Equal Rights Amendment, it was about 7 years. Others have taken hundreds of years because they didn't put a limit on it. But if you give them 5, 7, 8, 10 years, a balanced budget amendment will eventually pass. Jim Jordan in a little bit of trouble, too, with leadership. They may redistrict him out of existence. Oh, yeah. Even though he's friends with John Boehner, he has not towed the party line, and they are unhappy with that. So he could lose his job. We're going to talk about redistricting in the state at about 10:35, and then Willie is going to talk to Jim Jordan this afternoon on his show right here on 700 WLW. Every Thursday morning at 10:35, it's our game day powered by Donato's. Your chance to win gift cards from Donato's. Have a lot of fun. Play some games with us on the radio. It's every Thursday morning at 10:35 on 700 WLW. Coming up at about 9:52. Do you remember out of Delaware, Ohio, a month or so back, the woman who sprayed the cop with breast milk right from the tap? I have an update on that story. 9:52 this morning on 700 WLW. So while we've been discussing this debt ceiling, and that has been dominating the news all across the country, you're getting hardly anything else, you got to watch the other hand. While they have us fixating on one hand like a great magician, They do things with the other hand. Sleight of hand, misdirection. While they have been working on the debt ceiling and ginning up all kinds of people and attitudes about it, they made a few changes in Obamacare. Couple of changes in Obamacare.
Hello, comrade. It's time for another look at government health care.
The Obama administration has made some changes. It's called Women's Preventative Care. And under their new changes, this package will become available about January 1st, 2013, so just over a year in most areas. They will increase premiums across the board. Across the board, they will increase premiums in order to pay for women's preventative care, which includes paying for women's birth control without copays. This is something that basically has not been done in the past. There were some places that picked up, your copay, even if you worked for the government or part of government services. But birth control completely across the board as part of women's preventative care? I'm just thinking that maybe there could be another preventative method that didn't require me and my premiums to go up in favor of women. I'm just thinking, how else could women prevent pregnancies? Birth control. Is there any other way? What could there be? Not having sex. How about that one? If I'm not mistaken, that is 100% effective, whereas all other forms of birth control are not 100% effective. They call me crazy. Women's preventative care. You are going to pay more for your health care so women can get their groove on with no fear of getting pregnant. Some of the other preventative services, at least one well-woman preventative care visit annually, a checkup basically. They will also get screening for diabetes during pregnancy, screening for the virus that causes cervical cancer for women 30 and older. Your premiums will go up, so they will also get an annual HIV counseling and screening for sexually active women. Your premiums will go up, so they'll get screening for and counseling about domestic violence. Your premiums will go up, so they will get annual counseling on sexually transmitted infections for sexually active women. And finally, you will pay more for your premiums, so part of the women's preventative care, they will offer support for breastfeeding mothers, including the cost of renting pumps.
More government-imposed healthcare news coming. You listen for more on 700 WLW, the big one.
The way I understand it, a lot of these are preventative things that could be prevented if they just didn't have sex. Now you got screening for HIV for sexually active women. You don't need the screening if you ain't sexually active. If you ain't stepping out, if you ain't sexually active, you don't have to worry about that, right? I mean, if you want HIV screening for other reasons, like blood transfusions are fine, but this specifically says for sexually active women. How about diabetes during pregnancy? Don't get pregnant. We don't have to worry about that. Isn't that a choice? Here's the difference. If I get the flu, I didn't know I was going to get the flu. I didn't do anything quite often to get the flu. Many times you get sick or have an affliction where it is through no fault of your own. These are choices. Here's the thing. I hear about obesity and salt, that Big Brother needs to tell me to back off of salt, that I shouldn't be eating trans fats, all of these things because it's preventative health care, Doc. See, if you act irresponsibly, all of us have to pay for it. So we've got to mandate that you act responsibly with your health. And I've always said, well, there's an easier solution. Don't pay for people's health care if they're irresponsible. But that's a separate argument. But their argument is that we need preventative care. We need to prevent things from happening. So you've got to go out and exercise. You've got to eat better. You've got to make better choices in your life. Okay, great. Why do we need preventative care for women after pregnancy or while they're sexually active? The real prevention here is don't have sex. So just like they're telling me not to eat trans fats, maybe women shouldn't be having sex. Are they going to say, as part of preventative care, I can eat the trans fats, live in a sedentary lifestyle, eat salts, do all of these bad things, and then there'll be another level of prevention? No. So don't have sex. All right, I'm getting an email from Barb here saying that, if I understand her right, that the drive to procreate is very basic in all of us, and you can't expect women not to procreate. Still a choice, Barb. Not everybody procreates. Along that line of reasoning, well, if your sex drive is that powerful, and I'm not disputing that it is, then why doesn't the government also pay for me to pick up a hooker? Right? I'm just fulfilling a function, right? They should pay me for that then. All of our premiums have to go up so women can have sex, and we can make sure to either prevent them or help them prevent getting pregnant, or to help prevent them from getting some other disease. Or if they do get pregnant or a disease, then it helps monitor that or check for them while they're pregnant. Don't have sex, and then I don't have to pay for it. It seems pretty simple to me. Am I missing the point on that? How about just not having sex? If I'm missing the point, by all means, 513-749-7000 or 800, the big one, or pound 700 on AT&T. I think maybe we're going to see a whole new generation of products pop up as well. As part of Obamacare, if you're going to pay for this stuff and people can't afford some of this stuff, guess what? I see a market for cheaper products, maybe do-it-yourself stuff.
Saving money is in, and your appendix needs to come out. What's the answer? Obamacare! New from the makers of Government Default comes the home remedy for everything that ails you. Need a CAT scan? Now you get your pick. Tabby or Siamese. Do-it-yourself surgery kits will soon be available at our roadside clinics. Just look for the specially marked Econoline vans with doctors spray painted across the gray primer door. What could possibly go wrong? But wait, there's more. Personal home dentistry kits just $4. String and pliers extra. You'll have hours of fun reading Brain Surgery for Dummies, the easy DIY remedy, with free pocket mirror for those hard-to-reach places like the medulla oblongata. Home dialysis, including Ziploc baggie and aquarium tubing at no extra charge. Dyson Home Liposuction, the only bagless lipo with a bowl for easy maneuvering around sharp corners. And think of the money we're all saving not paying those mean old insurance companies who used to waste money on expensive hospitals and stuff. It's the best single-payer playa. Obamacare. A germ's worst nightmare. And yours too.
Dan Carroll's in for Sloaney and Tracy this afternoon, 3 to 6 on 700 WLW. Why should I have to pay for somebody else's birth control? Paula in Loveland, you're on the air.
I know what you're doing to get phone calls because I've got a friend in the trades, but what you just said was so
Wait a second, Paula. What I'm doing to get phone calls?
Everybody does this. Please, I have a friend.
No, Paula. Not everybody does it.
I'm not going to argue about that.
No, Paula, hold on a second. You just leveled an accusation and wanted to run. I do not do things to get phone calls. I speak my mind on this program. If you disagree, that's fine.
Okay. That's fine. Let me talk about the egregious things that you've said so far. Number one, it is not just for people that have sex, when they're single. This is about people planning their families and not having a child.
Paula, I didn't say when they were single. Did I say when they were single?
You've been ranting around about that. This is
Paula, I did not say that. I did not say exclusively for people when they were single. But even so, even if you're married, I shouldn't have to pay for your family planning.
Well, if you don't, then people have babies and they have birth defects, and then people have to pick up the freight for that.
No. We don't have to pick up the pay for that.
Yes, you do.
No. Paula. We don't have to. That's something that some people have decided to do. I say you pay for your family and your kids. If they have birth defects or whatever, you pay for them.
Number two, when you are pregnant, when you have a child that's fairly large and you have subsequent children, your chances of diabetes go up. okay? If you have a child that's large, their chances of having birth defects are fairly high. If you have a child and you have an infectious disease, that can affect your baby too. So all this crap that you're yelling about is all things that people have when they are pregnant and they don't get pregnant out of wedlock. That's all I got to say. Okay?
Paula,
Bye.
it doesn't matter, pregnant or not. All of that can be prevented if you don't have children. You're talking about second kids, first, none of that matters. You as an individual choose whether or not to have kids, whether it's just have sex or have kids. That is a choice. You're not born pregnant. You're not a tribble. Don't have kids. If you want to have kids, pay for them. If you don't want to have kids, pay for the prevention. If you get diabetes or an infection or anything else, whatever you threw out there after having multiple kids, then pay for it. If your kid has a birth defect or whatever, pay for it. Why should I? I may make the choice in life not to have any kids. But you make the choice to have kids and society has to pick up the tab? I never said it's exclusively single women. Married women too. You make that choice. You might get married and decide not to have kids. I shouldn't have to pay for it. Society shouldn't have to pay for it. So let me ask you this. I would ask her if she didn't, snipe and run. So I guess with your attitude then, if we go ahead and do this preventative care, then we should no longer provide anything for anybody who has kids. Well, because if we're providing birth control, then you make that choice, right? We provide birth control as part of this. If you make the choice to have kids, then why do I have to pay for anything that happens to you or your kid once you make that choice? We gave you free birth control. You didn't have to have them. Can I stop paying for people on welfare because they have a bunch of kids then? Because we're offering birth control? You want me to pay for your birth control, and you also want me to pay once you have kids. It's a choice. Doc Thompson in the home of the Reds, 700 WLW. Doc Thompson at 700 WLW. Got an email from Paul, doc at 700WLW.com. He said, whoa, Doc, slow down. I, for one, am for anything that keeps women clean and humping like rabbits. I understand your point, Paul. I understand it very well. Jim, Madeira, hi there.
Good, how are you?
Good.
My point is that they're offering women the free birth control, where they also offer men free Viagra or condoms so we can have safe sex also.
I can only imagine if they were going to play fair, as they like to say they probably would. But you got to remember, Jim, this is very political, and it sounds nice to say women's preventative health. That's part of this whole thing. It's ginning up support after segregating people, this case by gender. Segregating and say, we're concerned about women. I had a guy in yesterday to tell you women are getting a far better deal in America right now than men and have been for years. Far more of them graduate from college. More of them are getting advanced degrees. They are doing quite well. So why is there an office of women? That's what this really comes down to. Because it really is a choice. You don't have to have sex. You don't have to have kids. Then we could do away with all of this. But it sounds good. Hey, remember that woman in Delaware, Ohio? Couple of months back who sprayed the cop with breast milk? Well, she appeared in municipal court. She was sentenced for the misdemeanor assault and obstruction of official business. She ended up getting $200 in fines, and she's going to have to serve 40 hours of community service. Remember, she was in the car. She started yelling profanities, refused to get out of the car when the cop pulled her over. And then she removed her right breast from her dress and began spraying deputies and the car with her breast milk. Well, she will now have to pay $200 in fines and serve 40 hours of community service. I can only imagine that community service will be at a nursery or at a dairy. Doc Thompson, home of the Reds, 700 WLW.